Hello, friends, and welcome back to another set of malicious compliance stories. Let's talk about what happens when money reveals people's true colors. A lazy, narcissistic brother decides he's owed part of his late grandfather's estate even after stealing from his own mother's account. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. How to lose an inheritance in 10 days. My grandfather died recently, leaving his 3 kids, my mom, aunt, and uncle, a huge stack of unorganized inheritance. To give you an idea of how annoyingly tedious and stressful the whole thing was to deal with, a few of my aunts and uncles are already writing up their own wills so their children, my cousins, don't have to fight over anything like how the 3 are now. He was loaded, but with how scattered around his assets were, it was taking a while to get everything in order, so what ended up happening is they're starting with whatever homes. My mother didn't get much at first, but 2 of my older brothers convinced her siblings to give her at least $700,000 in cash and 2 of his old rundown houses, the one we're currently living in and another one nearby, since there was more to be processed anyway and my mom was losing money faster than she could make. Eldest brother, who we'll call Archie, 37-year-old male, is an unemployed, overconfident, narcissistic piece of crap no one likes. He has a kid and his wife is pregnant. Second is his twin, Ronnie, 37-year-old male. He grew up to be a more responsible version of Archie. He recently got married and works a really well-paying job as a professor like our grandfather. I have another brother, 19-year-old male, but he isn't important as he's off at college abroad. Archie was my grandfather's favorite grandson because he was the smartest growing up, but Archie himself only ever spent time with him as a way to get cash for whatever the hell he does all day. When he realized he didn't leave a will, he scrambled to get his hands on anything he could, thus playing lawyer with my mom's siblings and getting her 2 properties and money. This is where it gets blurry on my end since I was never allowed to be part of family meetings, but from what I know from context clues is Archie somehow convinced my mom to give him one of the houses, the one we weren't living in, since I was like Grandpa's son. I deserve something. Mom's siblings were calling bullcrap, and my aunt, lawyer, didn't want him to get anything or involve him in the meetings at all, but he kept weaseling his way in. My mother, just tired from everything at that point, agreed to give him the property as long as he paid for the restoration himself. He agreed and everyone was happy. Archie got the house but hired the same contractor my mom hired to work on her house. I have no idea why the contractor agreed to work both jobs at the same time despite the obvious lack of manpower, because what ended up happening was Archie would go to his house at 12 p.m. and watch the guys work, making sure they do their jobs, and leave at around 4 p.m., and only then would they come work on my mom's house. With how things were going, the deadline kept drawing closer and closer, and the house was still a leaky, poorly ventilated mess. Ronnie, on the other hand, had a whole business plan with my mom's $700K, but considering the plan was random stock trading, he'd already lost a lot of money and my mom didn't want to do it. He pushed for a few months, but each time my mom turned him down. Around 2 weeks later, turns out Archie was taking money out of the $700K in my mom's bank account. This was the final straw. She took the house back from him and kicked him out. Thankfully, Aunt wasn't done processing the property transfer docs yet, so it was easy for her to just reverse the whole thing. Archie came back a few times to demand his rightful share back. It got so bad to the point I had to step in and stop the guy from physically attacking my mother. He never landed a hit, but my mom was still scared of him. Yesterday, both Ronnie and Archie came over as a final attempt at salvaging what they could after Archie's outbursts, and they came to an agreement. Archie, Ronnie's college bro, and me are all getting $60K. My mom thought it would be easier to just give all of us money so no one got jealous of anyone else, but if anyone wanted any more money, they'd have to wait until she kicked the bucket. Archie was still mad about not getting anything, so he demanded he get his cut of inheritance right then and there. At this point, Ronnie just wanted to go home, and I was trying to study for entrance exams. Though his yelling and fake crying to my mother, he kept using his children as an excuse as to why he needed the money, but couldn't work for it apparently. He kept yelling about how he wished Mom would drop dead right there so he'd get his money, and Ronnie dragged him out of the house before he could do any real damage. Now my mom is cutting Archie out of the will with no chances of him getting back in. I'm still going to be living with her for her safety, and she's looking into getting a security system to keep Archie out. Her bank account's secure now. She put me in charge of watching it while she gets her affairs in order. Archie sounds like one of those people who's been handed everything in life and still thinks the world owes him more. The way he used your grandfather for money, then tried to hijack your mom's share is disgusting, especially after she already gave him a house out of sheer exhaustion. Like, how do you look your grieving mother in the face, demand more money, and still have the nerve to throw a tantrum when she says no? And our second story. She tried to steal a home. Karma didn't miss. Back in the late 80s, my mom, let's call her Margaret, was diagnosed with a degenerative neurological condition. My dad, Daniel, was working long hours to keep food on the table and make sure she got the best treatment possible. With 2 kids and a body that was failing Margaret more every year, they realized they needed long-term help. For a while, we had an au pair, but it wasn't a great fit. They were about to hire a nursing company when Margaret's sister, Carol, made what sounded like a generous offer. Move in with us, I'll take care of her, family should take care of family. The deal they came up with was surprisingly formal for family business. Daniel would pay to build a large addition onto Carol's home, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen, living room, and unfinished basement. Carol would be Margaret's primary caretaker for as long as needed. Margaret would have full living rights to the addition until her death. Once she passed, the addition would become Carol's property. So in 1990, we moved 3 hours away into Carol's house while the addition was built. It wasn't a mansion, but it more than doubled the size of their home, and we finally had our own space with separate doors and utilities. At first, Carol was great. She cooked, she helped with the kids, she sat with Margaret during the bad days, but then her marriage fell apart, and almost overnight, she stopped keeping up her end of the deal. Daniel eventually hired a home nursing service to come daily, and Carol treated that like a free pass to check out completely. Margaret's illness progressed until she was bedridden, so Carol began handling the shopping, and that's when the financial drain started. First, it was small things she added to Margaret's credit cards, then bigger and bigger purchases. When Daniel finally added up the statements, he realized she'd charged roughly $20,000 in personal spending, which would be closer to $40,000 today. One night, Daniel sat her down and said, "Carol, this stops now. You're bleeding me dry. I've canceled the cards." Carol's answer, "Then get out of my house." It was technically Margaret's house, but Daniel couldn't afford a drawn-out legal battle. He started making plans to move us out, and then came the twist. Carol hadn't paid her mortgage in months, and the bank began foreclosure. Daniel saw an opportunity. If he bought the mortgage, he could secure the addition and let Carol stay as a tenant. He started negotiating with the bank. Carol panicked. She called every relative she had begging for money. Eventually, she convinced Maria, an old family friend, to step in and help. Maria called Daniel to say she was going to give Carol the money to save the house. Daniel told her flatly, "If you just hand her cash, she'll fall behind again. Buy the mortgage yourself and rent it to her. At least then you won't lose your money." Maria did exactly that, and of course, Carol immediately stopped paying rent. 2 years later, Maria called Daniel, completely done with the situation. "I can't get a dime out of her. Do you want to buy the property from me?" It was a stretch, but Daniel pulled the money together and bought the entire house, the original structure, and the addition he'd built. When Carol found out, she suddenly turned sugar sweet and begged to stay. Daniel agreed, but under one condition. "If you miss a single payment," he warned, "I will start eviction immediately. No extensions, no excuses." She signed the lease, made 2 payments, and then, right on schedule, called to ask for more time. "Sorry, Carol," Daniel said, "but the contract is clear. Pay by the due date or I start eviction." The deadline came and went. No money appeared. Daniel filed for eviction the next morning. Carol stormed over, yelling that Daniel was tearing the family apart and that he had no right to kick her out of her house. Daniel didn't even raise his voice. He just pointed at the signed lease and said, "You had your chance. You can leave on your own, or the sheriff will be here in 2 weeks to help you." She moved out before it came to that, probably to avoid the humiliation of being thrown out publicly. For years afterward, Daniel rented the house, using the income to fund Margaret's medical care. When Daniel and Margaret eventually divorced in 2002, Daniel gave her the house as part of the settlement so it could be sold to continue paying for her care until she passed in 2009. Carol, as far as anyone knows, still thinks Daniel stole her house, but every time I drive past that property, I can't help but grin knowing she got kicked out of a home that my dad literally built for her, all because she couldn't stop taking advantage of us. She tried to push us out of a house meant to keep my mom comfortable. In the end, we stayed, she lost, and my dad came out owning the whole place. The fact that the house ended up funding Margaret's care for years makes this feel so much sweeter. Carol lost the one thing she was trying to control, the house, and it became the very thing that made sure Margaret had what she needed until the end. That's justice with a bow on it. And our last story. Neighbors were using my private driveway for 20 years. I got lucky with this house. It's my dream place, tucked away on a private lot that backs right up to a quiet river. One side's bordered by a subdivision, the other by a peaceful park. Behind the house, I own just over an acre that extends to the water with a small public easement so folks can walk along the riverbank. Sounds perfect, right? It was, until I realized the people in that subdivision had apparently decided my driveway was their personal shortcut to the park and river. At first, I tried to let it go. I'd catch people strolling down my driveway like it was part of a public trail, dogs off leash and everything. I used to get annoyed because our old dog was reactive, and seeing other dogs run free in our backyard drove her crazy. But after she passed, I tried to make peace with it. I figured, fine, at least they're enjoying nature. But the problem didn't stop at pedestrians. People started driving down my private driveway. Cars, every single day. They'd pull in, cut across my property, and use it to shave a few minutes off the proper route to the park. We put up polite signs, private driveway, no trespassing, residents only. They were ignored. I tried confronting people when I caught them, but it was like arguing with ghosts. They'd either speed off or pretend not to see me. Today, I finally snapped. An older man pulled up, parked halfway down my driveway, and started unloading fishing gear. I walked out and told him as politely as I could that this was private property. He didn't apologize, he lectured me. His exact words started with, "Let me explain something to you, Sonny," which is always a great sign you're about to hear something stupid. He told me he'd been using this driveway for 20 years, that he was a disabled veteran and that he had every right to be there. I told him I respected his service, but this was still my land, not a community highway. He waved me off and started shuffling toward the river, leaving tire ruts in my gravel. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I spent my weekend digging up old property maps, pulling county records, and talking to the city office. Sure enough, my driveway was 100% private, and the public easement behind the house only extended along the riverbank, not through my yard, meaning everyone driving or walking down my drive was trespassing. The next morning, I hired a contractor. Enter Karen. She lives 3 houses down in the subdivision, the self-proclaimed voice of the neighborhood. When the workers showed up to install a privacy fence with the side of my driveway, she came marching down the hill like she was the HOA president of the universe. She didn't even say hello before she started shouting about how I just can't block public access and how I was ruining the community's river access. I calmly explained that there was still a legal walking path 3 blocks away, that my property wasn't part of it, and that I was tired of people treating my home like a shortcut. That didn't go over well. She called me selfish and un-American. The fence crew just kept drilling posts while she ranted, which only made her angrier. She started calling the police right there in my driveway, claiming I was illegally restricting access to a public area. The officer who showed up looked beyond done the moment she started talking. I showed him the property survey and easement map I'd gotten from the county. He looked at it for all of 10 seconds before telling Karen that I was well within my rights to put up a fence, and that if she or anyone else set foot on my property again without permission, they'd be cited for trespassing. The look on her face was pure gold. The fence crew even chuckled. By the end of the day, a beautiful 6-foot cedar fence ran the length of my driveway with a fresh private property, no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted sign bolted right to the gate. The fence did what words couldn't. It shut down 2 decades of entitled behavior overnight. Karen's outrage was predictable. People like her confuse habit with right. She probably spent years believing your driveway belonged to the community simply because no one stopped her. But you did, and you did it legally. The irony is that your solution didn't hurt anyone, it just reminded them where the boundaries actually were. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.